For 14 months, Renee Calloway counted coins on a drugstore counter at 5:12 in the morning. 9.47 for a pack of diapers is the state of Missouri for, but never these. She counted them twice. The pharmacist behind the glass had known her face 11 months before Renee ever learned the woman's name and never once let on. Renee did not know the woman's husband owned 312 of these stores across 3 states. He did not know that the smallest one, on Goodfellow Boulevard, kept a worn 1971 50-cent piece in its register drawer, the one he had stopped looking for 11 years ago. In 9 nights he would walk through that door at 5:12 in the morning. Neither of them knew yet that a 50-cent piece was about to answer a question his money had spent 30 years arranging him out of. Renee was 27. She lived in 2 rooms above a shuttered laundromat on the north side of St. Louis, 3 blocks off Goodfellow, where the rent was $640 a month and the radiator banged at 2 a.m., like somebody was trapped inside it. Her shift at Glen Haven Care Center ran from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. 8 hours when the place belonged to her and the residents and nobody else. She was a certified nursing assistant. She made $13.40 an hour, 14, the home, paid, time and a half. And after tax and fees, it came to something near $1 and $7.20 and 20s a month, which had to cover the $640 rent, the $40 phone, the $60 light bill, the $30 Mama Lou Frushi Pimo Mama Lou for the boys. 2 tried pum ways to give each, and the diapers the state did not believe were a necessity. Some weeks there was did not believe were a necessity. Some weeks there was a coffee can on the windowsill, and a prayer she did not say out loud. The twins were 14 months old. Khalil came first by 4 minutes and slept like a stone. Andre came second, weighed 3 pounds 11 ounces at birth to Khalil's 4 pounds 2 and slept, even now, like a question that never got answered. They were not identical, though strangers swore they were, and the only person on earth who never once mixed them up was the woman who kept them while Renee worked nights. Her grandmother, who everybody for 60 years had called Mama Lou. Mama Lou had come up from Greenwood, Mississippi in the spring of 1961 with a cardboard suitcase, $19 sewn into the hem of her coat, and a cast skillet, and she still had the skillet. It was 60-some years black and slick, and she would be buried before she scrubbed the seasoning out of it. She had buried a husband in 1994 and outlived 2 of her 3 children, and she did not, as she put it, have time for foolishness or for self-pity, which she considered the same thing wearing 2 different hats. She was 79. She kept the boys in her front room on Margaretta Avenue, 4 blocks and 1 church from Renee, under a tall window where the morning came in gold by 7:15. She fed them. She rocked Andre when the questions kept him up at 3 a.m., and when Renee dragged in at 7:40, hollowed out, smelling of the lemon disinfectant they bought by the gallon at Glen Haven, Mama Lou would already have a plate going. Cornbread in the iron skillet, grits with too much. On the first Sunday of the month, a square of sweet potato pie wrapped in a paper towel that Renee was supposed to eat and almost always handed to the boys. "You eat that," Mama Lou would say, not turning from the stove. "You can't pour from a dry cup, baby. Ain't a soul been helped by a empty pitcher." Here is what Renee's days looked like when you laid them out flat on the table. She woke at 6:30 in the evening in a satin bonnet on a mattress on the floor because a bed frame was $49 at the place on Natural Bridge and $49 was 4 packs of diapers. She fed the boys at 6:45 2 bottles, 6 ounces each, the formula wick covered. She bathed them in the kitchen sink because the tub drained slow. She braided nothing. They were boys with soft hair still, but she rubbed shea butter into their scalps the way her own mother had done for her. 3 small circles behind each ear, a thing her hands did without asking her. She loaded them into the double stroller, found at a St. Cyprian's Church rummage sale for $11, 1 wheel that pulled left so you walked it at a slight angle your whole life. And she pushed them 4 blocks to Mama Lou's. She kissed 2 foreheads. She caught the 9:48 bus on Goodfellow and rode it 22 minutes with her forehead against the cold window, and most nights she slept 4 of those 22 minutes and counted it a gift. She clocked in at 10:51. She did not clock in at 11 because she was always 9 minutes early, and she had learned a long time ago that the world does not reward the early, but it does, eventually, notice them. At Glen Haven she turned bodies that could not turn themselves, every 2 hours 16 turns a night across the 11 residents on her hall. She changed the kind of diaper nobody puts in a commercial. She filled out the flow sheets, initialed the med pass she was not allowed to give but was allowed to witness, and at 3 a.m. she mopped the long tile hall, 90 feet of it, end to end, because the day porter had been cut to part-time in a budget meeting. Renee was never in. She held hands. There was a woman in room 14, Miss Ruthie Dane, 91 years old, 93 pounds, who had not had a single visitor in 2 years and 4 months Renee had worked there. Not a card, not a call. Miss Ruthie was frightened of the dark in the particular way of people who have started to suspect they will die in it. So at 3:15 in the morning on her unpaid 15-minute break, Renee would carry her own folding chair into room 14 and sit. She did not talk much. She would hum low, the kind of thing Mama Lou hummed at the stove, an old church number with the words worn off it. Precious Lord, sometimes, slow, no rush in it. Miss Ruthie would find sleep against the sound the way a small dock. Renee never wrote it on a timesheet. She never told her supervisor, Mrs. Oakfor, who would have liked it. She never told a soul. Kindness you do in the dark still counts, Mama Lou used to say, back turned, working the skillet. Matter of fact, child, I believe it counts double. The Lord don't grade on who happened to be watching. Renee believed that, or wanted to badly enough that on the hard mornings the two felt like the same thing. There was no father. Or rather there had been one. Somewhere a man named Cortez who had stood in a NICU hallway the night the boys came 8 weeks early, looked at the two of them in their plastic boxes under the warming lights, with the tape on their faces and the in their arms, said the words, "This is a lot," and was gone before they came home at day 41. He had stayed 19 days. He left a phone number that stopped working by March and a half-built crib that Renee eventually traded a downstairs neighbor for a space heater that ran dual 30 once an hour she could not really spare. He never sent $1. Renee never chased him for one. She had decided, on a night she did not like to revisit, that she would not spend the rest of her life standing behind a man who had already shown her his back. So the math was hers, all of it, and the math was a wire pulled tight. WIC, the Federal Program for Women, Infants, and Children, gave her vouchers for formula, for milk, for eggs, for whole grain cereal, for peanut butter, dried beans, and a flat orange brick of cheese. It was real, and she was grateful, and she would have gone under without it. But there was a hole in the bottom of it, and the hole was shaped exactly like a diaper. No federal benefit in the United States buys diapers. Not food stamps, not WIC, not one. You can be a mother of 2 with an empty cabinet and a card the government has loaded with $94 of food, and you still cannot legally trade a cent of it for the one thing standing between your son and a rash that turns, to a sore that turns, if you are unlucky enough and poor enough, into a $200 clinic visit you will carry on a payment plan for 3 years. Renee had learned this the way the poor learn most things, by walking face first into it at a register. So she counted coins. She kept a red Folgers can on the windowsill above the radiator, and into it went everything that came loose in the world. The dime in the laundromat coin return, the 47 cents in change when she had to break $1 for the bus, the 2 quarters Mama Lou would press into her palm at the door and then deny pressing. On Fridays, before her shift, Renee would sit on the kitchen floor with the can between her knees and the boys asleep behind her, and she would count it into dollar stacks on a folded dish towel so the coins would not ring on the wood and wake them. Some Fridays it came to $11.25. Some Fridays it came to $4.50. One Friday in October it came to $2.13, and she sat with it in both hands for a while and then got up and went to work. She carried whatever it was knotted in a sandwich bag, in the side pocket of the diaper bag. The diaper bag was the one thing she would have grabbed in a fire after the boys themselves. Navy canvas gone gray, the strap held on by a brass safety pin found like the stroller in a church basement. St. Teresa's ran a sale the first Saturday of every month out of the fellowship hall. Long folding tables, a 50-cup percolator going, the older women fanning themselves with cardboard funeral home fans even in January out of pure habit. In the bag's zipped inside pocket was the one possession in Renee's whole life that was not strictly necessary, and that she would not have sold for any number you could have written down. It was a 50-cent piece. A Kennedy half-dollar, 1971, the silver soft and brown at the high points from 50 years of being thumbed, with a small notch filed into the rim at the top, the kind of mark a man makes so that he will always know his own. Mama Lou had pressed it into Renee's hand the day she passed her CNA boards, in the gravel lot behind St. Cyprian's, and closed Renee's fingers over it with both of her own. Because Mama Lou had been a nurse's aide herself for 41 years, most of them on the 4th floor of Holy Name General, in the unit where the smallest, earliest babies fought for their lives in plastic boxes under warming lights. And it was Mama Lou that Renee had been quietly trying to become since she was 9 years old. Mama Lou had sat through more last nights, with more children who were not her own, than she would ever put a number to. The hum Renee carried into room 14 at 3:15 in the morning, the old church number with the words worn off, was Mama Lou's hum first. It had been sung over a great many small beds. "A man give me this," Mama Lou said, in the gravel lot, turning the coin once in her fingers. Worst night of his whole life. Pressed it in my hand like it was nothing and like it was everything, both at the same time. Folks do that, child, at the end of a thing. Hand you the one piece of themselves they've been holding on to. She closed Renee's fingers over it. "So you carry something that ain't for spending. Everybody need one thing in they pocket the world can't make them sell. This here's yours now. Don't you let nobody talk you out of it, not even on a bad week, especially not on a bad week. Renee never spent it. The week the light got cut, they ran the numbers wrong. A $61 bill she'd paid landed against the wrong account, and it took 9 days to fix while she and the boys slept under every blanket they owned and the space heater she could not afford to run. Even that week, she had taken the coin out, held it in the dark until it went warm in her palm, and zipped it back where it lived. Some things you keep precisely so you will remember you are not only the sum of what you can afford. That was the woman who walked into the Crestline Drug on Goodfellow at 5:12 in the morning, 3 or 4 mornings a week, on her way home from an 8-hour shift, with a sandwich bag of counted coins in one fist and 2 hands that would not be empty long. The company that owned that store and 311 others across Missouri, Illinois, and Arkansas belonged to a man named Damon Whitfield. And Damon Whitfield had also come up from nothing, which was the single fact nobody who saw him now would have believed without a notarized document. He was 56. His suits were cut for him by a man on Maryland Avenue and ran near $3,000 apiece, and he wore them the way other men wear armor, exact, nothing left loose. He had grown up 9 miles and a whole world away from Goodfellow, in a stretch of the city his own company's billboards now politely called Undeserved, which was a laundered word for a place that for 11 years had no pharmacy at all, where his mother rode 3 buses each way to fill a $4 prescription and where, more than once, she simply did without and prayed instead. His father had run a corner store, Whitfield's, a single room, a brass bell on the door, 4 narrow aisles, and a meat case that hummed. He had opened it in 1971 with money 3 men had loaned him on a handshake. He ran it on credit he extended to neighbors who could not always pay, kept the running tabs in a black marble composition book. And he died at 51 owing $14,000 he had borrowed and owed $9,000 in tabs he never once tried to collect. Generous straight into the grave. There was a coin. From the first week the store was open, Damon's father had kept a single 50-cent piece taped to the underside of the register, a 1971 Kennedy $half, the first $half the store ever took in, with a small notch he had filed into the rim with his own hand, so that he would know it anywhere on God's earth. That right there's the store's luck, he would say, and he would not let a soul spend it. When his father died, Damon pried the coin loose with a butter knife and carried it for the better part of 20 years, in the watch pocket of every $3,000 suit, the one soft thing on a hard man, until a night 11 years ago that he could no longer makes himself think of. The night he gave it away, and never once told Brianna that he had. Damon had watched all of it from behind that counter. From the age of 7, stocking shelves and reading the tabs upside down. He had drawn the wrong lesson, the way grieving sons sometimes do. He decided his father had been a good man and a foolish one, and that the good and the foolish had been the same thing, and that they had killed him at 51, and that he, Damon, would not be the second. So he learned to count. He was extraordinary at it. He turned 1 store into 2 in 1998, 2 into 9 by 2004, 9 into a regional chain by 2011, and somewhere in all that climbing he laminated a single sentence to the inside of his ribs and read it to himself every morning before his feet hit the floor. "You don't give away inventory," he would say, in board meetings on the 31st floor downtown, to district managers, to anybody who came at him with a soft ideas and a softer margin. "My father gave away inventory. You know where that gets a man? A nice funeral he can't pay for, and a widow taking 3 buses to bury him. We are not in the business of nice funerals. We are in the business of being here in 20 years. He said it so often that the people under him began saying it back to him, word for word, in his own cadence, which is exactly how you can tell when a man's private wound has finished hardening into a company's policy. Because it was a wound, the counting was always a wound. Damon had married a pharmacist. Brianna was 12 years younger, brilliant, exact. With a laugh he had once driven 214 miles to Kansas City and back to here at a friend's wedding. She still worked the counter 3 days a week at the Goodfellow store, his oldest and smallest, the one his accountants put on the close list every single year. He took it off the list every single year. He told the board it was sentiment about his father's old neighborhood. And that was true, but it was not the whole truth. And the whole truth was the second reason Brianna still stood behind that one particular pane of glass, on that one corner, in pale blue scrubs, counting other people's pills at 5 in the morning when she could have run the corporate pharmacy division from a chair on the 31st floor. They had a son once. His name was Elias. He lived 11 weeks. He had come too early, 26 weeks, 1 pound 9 ounces, like a great many things born in that part of the city, and he had fought for 79 days in a unit on the 4th floor of a hospital Damon could now buy outright with a single quarter's earnings. And on a Tuesday in February 11 years before any of this, at 4:52 in the morning he had simply stopped. There had been nothing to count. Damon, who could find money hiding in any column on any spreadsheet ever printed, sat in a molded plastic chair in a fourth-floor hallway and met the one ledger that would not balance no matter what he poured into it. 11 weeks lived, 200 and some days of a marriage spent in that hallway. One name they had said maybe 100 times a day, and then, by a kind of silent treaty between two people who could not have survived saying it, stopped saying it all. There was a nursery they had painted pale green, a color Brianna picked from 40 paint chips taped to a wall. There was a small wooden plaque she had hung over the crib, Elis, carved in plain block letters by an old man at a church bazaar, $40. The man would not take $50, said $40 was the price and the price was the price. After the funeral, in the middle of the night, Damon had taken the plaque down off the wall himself with a screwdriver and laid it face down in the bottom drawer of his dresser, and they had never spoken of the wall again. The wall stayed blank. They sold that house and bought a bigger one in 2016, 11 rooms, and somehow the blank wall came with them like a piece of furniture. Nobody could lift but nobody could throw out. And Damon kept counting. He counted because the only other thing on offer was to feel it, and he had learned at 4:52 a.m. in a plastic chair precisely what feeling cost, and he had decided he could not afford the price. This was the man whose chain printed the little orange sticker, 947, that Renee Calloway counted coins on a bus to meet. The morning it cracked open was a Thursday, the 9th of the month, and it was cold, 31 degrees, and there was a new clerk on the front register at the Goodfellow store. His name was Tyler. He was 19. He had been on the job 11 days, and he was not a cruel boy. That is the thing about the way the world grinds people like Renee fine. It is almost never a villain. It is almost always a 19-year-old following a screen. Renee came in at 5'9" with the gray bag over one shoulder and the sandwich bag of coins in her fist. She had counted it on the bus, twice the way she counted everything. The diapers were 9.40. She was short by 2:30 and he knew it to the penny, and she had a plan, the way the poor always have a plan, because the alternative to a plan is the floor. She would buy the small pack, the 14 count, $5.29, stretch it 3 days, instead of buying the value box she could not reach, and come back Saturday after Mama Lou's quarters and the laundromat dime and the 4.50 cents she'd have by then. She had done this exact arithmetic her entire adult life. She was not ashamed of it. She was tired of it, which is a different and heavier thing. But the 14 count shelf was empty. A gap where it should have been, a handwritten card taped to the wire saying the restock truck ran Fridays. There was only the 28 count 947s, and at home the boys had 2 diapers left between them, and Renee had no car, and she was not going to walk this back onto her grandmother's mourning. So she carried the big pack to the front and she set her 7.8 down in coins in a small bright pile on the black rubber mat. And she said low, even, to the boy behind the screen, "Can you hold this 2 minutes? I'm going to call somebody real quick. I'm 2 something short, I can get the rest." And Tyler, 11 days in, looked at the screen, and the screen had no button for that, and he said, "I'm sorry, the drawer's got a balance at shift change. I'm not allowed to hold an open item, my manager told me." He was not unkind about it. He said sorry. He said it twice. He simply did the thing the screen told him to do, the exact thing Damon Whitfield had spent 30 years teaching 312 stores to do, which was to let the drawer balance and let the person walk. There were 4 people in line behind her by then. A man buying a single pack of cigarettes, $8.19. A woman with a wet cough holding a box of generic cold medicine. A nurse, by her scrubs and her shoes, getting off a shift somewhere like Renee. Not one of the 4 said a word, and not one of them was a bad person. They were tired and it was 5:14 in the morning, and looking away at 5:14 in the morning is the easiest thing a human body knows how to do. Renee stood for 9 seconds. She counted them, the way she counted everything in this life. 9 seconds, perfectly still, the coins glinting on the black mat, the 28 count under her flat hand, her 2 boys 4 blocks north with 2 diapers between them and a great-grandmother who would die before she let on that anything at all was wrong. She did not raise her voice. She did not explain about the state and the formula, and the hole shaped like a diaper. She did not tell the boy that she turned other people's mothers and fathers in the dark for $13.40 an hour, or that she sat with a 91-year-old in room 14 who had nobody left on the earth, or that she had a 1971 50-cent piece in the side pocket of her bag that she would have gone hungry 3 days before she spent. She had decided long ago in a NICU hallway of her own that she would not beg the world for things, because the world will make you beg twice and pay you in nothing but the watching. So she gathered her coins back into the sandwich bag, one at a time with steady hands, while 4 people watched and a 19-year-old said sorry a 3rd time. She left the diapers on the counter. She lifted the strap of the gray canvas bag back onto her shoulder. She put her back straight the way Mama Lou had taught her to walk out of any room on this earth, chin level, eyes dry, and she walked out into the 31-degree dark, with nothing in her hands at all. The brass bell on the door rang behind her. It was the same make of bell, though she could not possibly have known it, that had hung for 30 years on the door of a corner store called Whitfield's 9 miles and 40 years south, where a generous man had once handed groceries across a counter to people who could not pay, written their names in a black composition book, signed his own slow ruin in his own neat hand, and loved every one of them anyway. What Renee never saw was the woman at the pharmacy counter, 20 feet back behind the tall glass, who saw all 9 seconds of it. Brianna Whitfield had been counting tablets into a tray, amoxicillin, 250 milligrams, a child's course, for a mother who'd be in at 7, and she had looked up at the sound of coins being counted out on a register mat, because it is a particular sound, coins counted in earnest by someone who has counted them at home first, and you do not ever forget that sound once you have been the kind of person who makes it. She had been watching Renee Calloway for 11 months. Not in any way Renee knew. Brianna worked Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and on most of those mornings, more or less, a young woman in a satin bonnet under a gray hood came in at 5:10 with a navy bag and bought diapers with coins. Brianna knew the boys were twins because once, only once, the previous springs, Renee had had them with her, in the rummage sale stroller, both in matching hand-me-down coats 2 sizes big, and one of them, the smaller one who slept like a question, had reached one fat hand up out of the stroller toward the bright pharmacy lights and laughed at nothing at all, the way babies laugh. And Brianna had stood frozen behind her glass and felt something move in her chest that she had spent 11 years and a moving van keeping very, very still. She knew that store ran on a different ledger than her husband's spreadsheets believed it did. She knew the regulars. She knew Mr. Pruitt came in at 6:30 not for his blood pressure pills but to be spoken to by name. She knew the morning woman with the coins never once asked for a thing, never made a scene, never tried to short the count by a penny. Always, always, counted it twice. So 8 months ago Brianna had started doing a small quiet thing. She had not told her husband. She had not told the district manager. She had certainly not told the morning woman, because the entire dignity of the morning woman was that she did not take what she had not earned, and Brianna understood in her bones that the fastest way to wound a person built like that is to be caught helping them. What Brianna did was this. On the mornings she worked, she kept 4 singles folded in the pocket of her scrubs, and when the count came up short for the woman in the bonnet, Brianna would drift up to the register, unhurried, as though she'd just happened to be passing on her way to the floor, and run her own card, and murmur, "It's a new custom promo. The system does it automatic, don't even worry about it," in the flat bored voice of a person doing inventory, and then walk away fast, before there could be a face, before there could be a thank you, before it could become a conversation. She had done it maybe a dozen times across 8 months. She had never once been thanked because she had never once let herself be caught. That was the whole architecture of it. But Brianna was not on the floor at 5:14 that Thursday. She was in the back, behind the glass, with a child's antibiotic in a counting tray, and both hands full of someone else's medicine. And by the time she set the tray down and came around the end of the high counter, the bell had already rung. The 28 count was already sitting abandoned on the black mat, and a 19-year-old named Tyler was already explaining to the man with the cigarettes sincerely, apologetically, that the drawer had to balance. Brianna stood at the head of aisle 3 in her white coat and watched the glass door swing shut on a gray canvas bag and a straight back going out into the cold. And she did the arithmetic her own husband had taught the entire region to do in their sleep, and she came up 2.39 cents on the wrong side of a thing that could not be counted at all. She found Renee 11 days later at the bus shelter on Goodfellow at 5:40 in the morning, the two of them waiting on the same 5:48 that was always 6 or 7 minutes late. Brianna almost did not speak. She had rehearsed nothing. She was off that day in jeans and an old coat, no white coat glass, a gas station coffee going cold in her hand, and without the counter between them she felt all at once that she had no right to any of it. But she sat down on the cold metal bench, 2 careful feet of empty space between them, and she heard her own mouth say, "Cold one." Renee said, which is what you say to a stranger at a bus stop when you have been awake since 6:30 the night before. They sat. The streetlight buzzed and flickered. A delivery truck went by and threw slush. And then Brianna, who had planned to say nothing, who had not spoken his name aloud to a single living person outside her own marriage in 11 years, who was a careful woman and a counted woman, and the wife of the most carefully counted man in 3 states, started talking, the way people sometimes do to a stranger in the dark before a bus, because a stranger is the one person on earth who cannot ever use it against you later. I had a baby once, Brianna said to the empty street, not to Renee. A boy, he came too early. He was 11 weeks old when he was 11 weeks old. She stopped, she started again, smaller. I don't know why I'm telling you this. Renee did not say I'm sorry. She did not say he's in a better place, or everything happens for a reason, or God needed another angel, or any of the things people fling at the grieving to fill a silence they themselves cannot stand for one more second. Renee had put more of her own people in the ground than a woman 27 should have had to, an uncle, a cousin, her own mother at 50. She knew exactly what those words were worth. They were worth nothing, and a person actually grieving could hear the nothing ring in them, like a coin on a wooden floor. So Renee did the one thing that was worth anything at all. She turned a little on the bench toward the woman, and she did not interrupt, and she did not try to fix it, and she let the silence get big enough to hold what had just been set down inside it. His name was Elias, Brianna said. We stopped saying it, my husband and me, we just stopped. Like if we never said it, it'd get smaller. A single breath that was not a laugh, it does not get smaller. No, Renee said, just that, no it don't. The 548 came at 5:55. The two women got on it. Brianna sat near the front and Renee near the back. The way the city had quietly taught both of them where to sit, and neither one knew the other's last name. Neither one knew that the name Elias had just been spoken out loud, into the cold for the first time in 11 years. Said to a woman who carried a 1971 50-cent piece her own grandmother's mother had once carried up out of Greenwood, in the zipped pocket of a bag that came out of a church basement, on her way home to two boys named Khalil and Andre, who were, at that exact minute, 4 blocks north and gold in their great-grandmother's tall window, 14 months old and entirely unaware that the world had just begun, very quietly, on a cold metal bench to turn. Canich 1, Teep 4, Part 2, 7-11, she count, 2 buy diapers for twin boys, the pharmacist husband, the chain. Teep Noy Part. Reveal Quidome 50 cent plus Proxy Brianna Mama Lou. 9 mornings after the bus, the boys were with Renee. Mama Lou had a 7:30 at the foot clinic that Tuesday, the diabetes catching up with her at last, so Renee had kept Khalil and Andre on the night shift's far edge and brought them home with her at dawn. Both of them packed into the rummage sale stroller with the wheel that pulled left, both in the matching coats, 2 sizes big. She stopped at the Crestline on Goodfellow at 5:12 because she was out, fully out, down to a single diaper folded in the bag for an emergency, and because today there were coins enough. 961 so counted twice on the bus, to buy the 28 count and have 14 cents over. Brianna was at the counter. She did not look right, and Renee, who spent her nights reading faces that could no longer speak, saw it in 2 seconds. The pharmacist had the gray look of a person who had not slept properly in over a week, since a cold bench, since a name said out loud. She rang the diapers without quite seeing them. She said, "That's 947, in a voice with the bottom worn out of it. And Renee, who had nothing to give anybody, no money, no time, no rest, 2 boys and a grandmother and a coffee can, did the only thing she had ever had to give. She reached into the zipped inside pocket of the gray bag and she took out the one thing in her life that was not for spending, and she set it on the black rubber mat next to her coins. My grandmother gave me this, Renee said quiet, the way you'd speak to a resident at 3 a.m. When things get to be too much, I hold it. She told me everybody needs one thing in their pocket the world can't make them sell. You look like you could use to hold something today. Go on, just for a minute." Brianna looked down at the coin. A 1971 Kennedy half-dollar, soft and brown at the high points, and a small notch filed into the rim at the top by a man's own hand so he would know it anywhere on God's earth. For 11 seconds, Brianna Whitfield did not move at all. She had seen that notch 1,000 times. It had ridden in the watch pocket of her husband's suit for the better part of 20 years. It had vanished out of his pocket and out of their marriage 11 years ago, and he had never once said where, and she had never once asked, because by then they had stopped asking each other anything that had a true answer. "Where?" Brianna said. Her voice came out wrong. She tried again. "Where did your grandmother get this?" "She was a aide," Renee said. 41 years. The baby floor over at Holy Name, 4th floor. She nodded at the coin like it was an old friend of the family, which to her it was. She said a man gave it to her one night. The worst night of his whole life is how she put it. She sat with a lot of those babies, the ones whose people couldn't be there round the clock. She'd sit and she'd hum to them so they wouldn't be by themselves at the end. Renee smiled a little, tired. "That's where I get my humming, from her." Brianna had her hand pressed flat to her own mouth. The bell on the door rang. Damon Whitfield came in at 5:14 in a charcoal suit, because his wife had been a stranger to him for 9 days, and he had finally, that morning, gotten in the car at 4:40, and driven to the one store he never visited, the smallest one, the one on the close list, to stand in his father's old neighborhood and try to remember how to ask her what was wrong. He came in counting. the way he came into every store he owned, shelf gaps, the line, the new kid on the register, reading 3 to 4 customers slow. He was halfway to the pharmacy counter before he saw his wife's face, and then he followed her eyes down to the black mat, to the small bright pile of coins, and the one coin sitting apart from the rest. He stopped cold. He was a man who could find $1 hiding in any column on any page in 3 states. He knew that coin the way he knew his own name. He had pried it loose from under a register with a butter knife the week his father was buried. He had carried it for 2 decades, and he had pressed it, at 4:52 on a Tuesday morning in February, into the hand of a tired black woman in scrubs, who had been humming to his son when the monitors went flat. Because in that one moment Damon Whitfield had understood, the only time in his life he ever truly understood it, that there was nothing left to count, and that the woman who had stayed at the side of the box so his boy would not be alone in it, had given Elias something Damon's whole fortune could not. And the only thing Damon had that was worth anything at all was the one thing he had sworn he would never give away. He had given it away, he had broken his own commandment exactly once, and then he had spent 11 years pretending he never had. Now it was lying on a rubber mat next to a sandwich bag of counted coins, in the smallest store he owned, and the young woman holding the diapers had her grandmother's hum, and 2 boys in a broken stroller, and his father's coin, and no idea on this earth who he was. Damon Whitfield put one hand on the counter to keep himself standing. "Elias," he said. The first time in 11 years he had said it out loud. It did not come out the way words come. It came out the way a wall comes down. He was a 56-year-old man in a $3,000 suit, and he put his face in his hands at the front of a drugstore at 5:15 in the morning, and he wept. And it was not the way grief sounds in movies. It was the way it sounds in kitchens, at midnight, in cars in parking lots, low and ugly and trying to be quiet and failing. Brianna came around the end of the counter, and she did not say it's okay because it was not, and she did not say anything at all. She just put her arms around the back of him and held on, the way you hold something that has been frozen so long, you are afraid it will crack coming back into the warm. "You don't give away inventory," Brianna said into his shoulder, and it was not cruel, it was the opposite of cruel, it was a key turning. "You gave it away once, it's the only thing you ever did that I'm sure of." In the stroller, Andre, the one who slept like a question, the one who reached, woke and pushed his small fist up out of the blankets toward the bright Pharmacist, and laughed at nothing, the way babies laugh, at the cold and the morning and the 2 crying strangers and the whole unaccountable world. Renee stood very still and held her boy's stroller with both hands, and understood that she had walked into the middle of something far bigger than diapers, and that the only decent thing to do, the way her grandmother had taught her, was not to fix it and not to flee it, just to be there while it happened. They closed the store. Damon Whitfield, who had not closed one of his stores for any reason in 30 years, turned the deadbolt himself at 5:21, hung the back in 30 sign that nobody at that store had ever once used, and they sat in the back in the dispensing area, on 3 stools, with the boy's stroller between them and a box of pharmacy tissues going down fast, and for the better part of an hour they put it together piece by piece, the floor, the year, the hum, the aid. "Her name is Lou," Renee said. "Renee Calloway, everybody calls her Mama Lou. She's 79. She's at the Foot Clinic right now, matter of fact." Renee looked from the woman to the man. "She sat with your son?" "For most of 11 weeks, Damon said. His voice was sandpaper. "Every night we couldn't be there," the nurses said. "There was an aide who'd come in on her own break. She'd sit with him. She'd hum." He pressed the heels of his hands to his eyes. "I never knew her name, 11 years. I never even knew her name." Then he reached into his suit and took out his checkbook, because it was the one language he was fluent in, the only way he knew to make a thing right, and he uncapped his pen and he said, "Whatever you need. Whatever the number is, the rent, the boys, your grandmother's care, name it. I mean it. There is no number that is too." "No," Renee said. She said it gently, but she said it like a door. "I don't take what I haven't earned," she said. "My grandmother didn't sit with that baby to get paid. She'd be ashamed of me. I took money for what she did out of love. And I won't," she stopped, found it. "I won't let my boys grow up off a check somebody wrote because they felt bad one morning. That's not a foundation. That's a guilty conscience. They're different things, and a child can tell the difference by the time they're 6. Damon Whitfield looked at her for a long moment, the way a man looks at a sentence in a ledger that finally, after years, makes the whole page balance. "Then let me ask you something instead," he said. He capped the pen. "You buy diapers with coins, why?" So Renee told him. About WIC and the hole in the bottom of it shaped exactly like a diaper. About how no benefit in the country, not food stamps, not anything, would buy the one thing a baby needs 8 or 9 times a day. About the 940 sticker and the 529 sticker and the math a woman does between them at 5 in the morning with 2 babies and a sandwich bag of coins. About the mothers she saw at this very counter who put back the 28 count for the 14 count, and put back the 14 count for nothing at all. About a rash that becomes a sore that becomes a $200 clinic bill. A family carries on a payment plan for 3 years. And it was somewhere in there, watching the man in the suit go from baffled to still to leaning forward, that Brianna said carefully, "Rennie, do you know who this is?" Renee said she did not. "This is Damon Whitfield," Brianna said. "He owns Crestline, all of them, 312 stores." She almost laughed, the grief and the absurdity of it together. "You've been counting coins for 14 months under his price sticker." Renee looked at the man who owned the chain. The man who owned the chain looked back at the woman who counted the coins. And for once in his life he did not feel like the one with the power in the room. This is what they built, and it took the better part of a year, and Renee earned every inch of it. She did not quit Glenhaven, not at first. She would not let go of one sure thing for a promise, and Damon respected her more for that than for anything else. So for the first 5 months she built the thing on her 2 days off a week, 16 hours that she did not have and found anyway, and only when it had grown past what 2 days could hold did she go full-time. Crestline created a position that had never existed in the company before. The salary was $54,000, with the kind of health benefits she had spent her whole life filling out forms about on behalf of other people. Nearly double the $13.40 an hour she had made turning bodies in the dark, and for the first time since the boys were born the coffee can on the windowsill held only what it was supposed to hold, which was coffee. The title on the door was Community Programs Coordinator. The work was simpler than the title. She built a diaper bank. It started in 11 stores on the north side, grew to 26 by the end of the first year, and it had a name. They called it the Elias Fund. Any family enrolled in WIC could come to a Crestline pharmacy counter. No application, no proof beyond the WIC card already in their wallet, and take what they needed for the month, the 28 count, the value box, whatever the babies went through, at no charge and with no speech attached. Renee wrote the rule herself and made them put it on the wall. No one has to explain themselves to receive this. She knew better than the lawyers who drafted around it exactly how much a poor woman's dignity costs and exactly who usually makes her pay it. In its first 4 months, the Elias Fund handed out a little over 9,000 packs of diapers to roughly 600 families across 7 North Side neighborhoods. Renee would not let anyone print a bigger number than the one she could stand behind, and she would not let them call it charity in any flyer. She made them write community, because charity is a thing you do to people, and community is a thing you do with them. And her grandmother had taught her the difference standing at a stove 60 years ago. Damon went to see Mama Lou. He drove himself the 9 miles to the little house on Margreta Avenue, and he sat in her front room under the tall window where the morning came in gold by 7:15, and he was, for once, not the richest man the block in any way that counted. He tried to thank her. He tried to find the number. Mama Lou waved all of it off with one hand the way she waved off foolishness and self-pity. "I don't remember your boy's face, baby. I'm not gonna lie to you," she said. "I sat with too many, but I remember I never let a one of 'em be by theyself at the end. That part I'm sure of." She studied him. "You been carrying that night 11 years like it's a debt. It ain't a debt. Wasn't never a debt. It was just a man doing the one kind thing he had left in him on the worst night of his life. You did right, now put it down." And Damon Whitfield, who had not been able to put it down in 11 years, began in that gold front room to put it down. There was one more thing, the coin. He had tried to give it back to Renee at the store and she had refused. It was hers now. Her grandmother had pressed it into her hand. It was for spending on no one. So instead, the week the Elias Fund opened its first dedicated room, a small bright 240 square foot space off the Goodfellow Pharmacy, painted pale green, a color Brianna chose from a fan of 40 paint chips the way she had chosen one once before. Damon brought something out of a drawer he had not opened in 11 years. A small wooden plaque, Elias in plain block letters, carved by an old man at a church bazaar for $40 who would not take 50. He hung it on the wall of the room himself with a screwdriver, his hands not steady, while Brianna held the level. The twins were almost 2 by then, and they came to the opening in coats that finally fit. The wall had been blank for 11 years. It was not blank anymore. And Renee kept the coin in the zipped pocket of the gray canvas bag, which she could have replaced now and did not. And on the mornings she worked the new room, she would sometimes see a young mother at the pharmacy counter 20 feet off, counting change onto the black mat, counting it twice, putting the big pack back for the small one. And Renee would walk up, unhurried, the way somebody had once walked up to her, and she would set the 28 count in the young woman's hands and say, in the flattest, most boring, most paperwork voice she could manage, "Promo. New customer thing. Don't even worry about it." And she would walk away fast, before there could be a thank you, before it could become a conversation, because She knew, the way her grandmother knew, the way Brianna had known. Exactly what it costs a proud woman to be caught being helped, and exactly how to make sure she never was. Kindness you do in the dark still counts. Maybe it counts double. The Lord doesn't grade on who happens to be watching. If this story made you think of someone who shows up when no one is keeping score, a grandmother, a night nurse, somebody who sat with you once and never mentioned it again, send it to them this week, while you still can. But before you go, here's the question that is going to split this room right down the middle, so be honest in the comments. Damon Whitfield could have changed Renee's life with money he would never have missed, and he only did it because she happened by pure chance to be carrying his father's coin. So tell me, if there had been no coin, no notch in the rim, no grandmother on the 4th floor, no thread tying the woman counting coins to the man who could change everything, would Renee have deserved that help any less? And how many of them are out there right now this morning at counters all over this country, doing the quiet good that no coincidence will ever connect to anyone who can change a single thing about their week? Leave your answer below, I read them. There's one line in tonight's story I keep coming back to. An old woman says it. I'm not sure I got it right. She says it in a parking lot. She's pressing a worn coin into her granddaughter's hand. Everybody needs one thing in their pocket the world can't make them sell. I'll be honest, I don't think I have mine yet. I keep looking for it. I wrote this for whoever's up at 5 in the morning. Maybe you're counting change at a counter right now. Maybe you put the big pack back and took the small one. I've never had to do that. I don't know what it costs. But I think the old woman is right. I think the morning hurts a little less when you're holding the one thing they can't make you sell. There's a version of this story where the rich man fixes it all with a check. I didn't write that one. She wouldn't have taken it. I'll be back next week with another story about somebody the world keeps walking past. Here's the line again. Carry it if you want it. Everybody needs one thing in their pocket the world can't make them sell.